So you've finally saved up enough money for a gaming PC. You've also made the decision that you just want to go down the easy route and buy a pre-built gaming PC because of the madness of this GPU shortage right now. But now you're stuck trying to find which pre-built to buy because there's literally thousands of options on the internet right now. Good thing I got you covered. Let's have a look. If you guys like saving money on your gaming PCs, and especially your gaming PC flips, then you'll absolutely love today's pre-roll ad. Shout out to Team Group for sponsoring today's video, and specifically their now live Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales, which have a whole lot of juicy deals for people like us. These deals are available on your favorite stores like Amazon, Newegg, and Micro Center, and there's some crazy good value in here, especially SSDs and RAM kits. This T-Force Vulcan Z 2x 8GB kit clocked at 3200 MHz is down to just $54, and these T-Force Cardia 1TB NVMe drives are down to $117, which is really solid for a Gen 4 drive with up to 5,000 over 4,400 read and write speeds. There's also a ton of deals on things like USB drives and SD cards, and feel free to head on down to the link in the description to learn more and save some money. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so this here is yet another pre-built gaming PC that we're checking out in the channel, and it very well might be the best option on the market right now for under $1,000. Just as a quick disclaimer, this is a sponsored video. All the links you need are down in the description, but being sponsored does not mean that I'm not going to freely speak my mind about this build. There are indeed some things wrong with this pre-built gaming PC, but honestly, there's going to be something wrong with probably every pre-built gaming PC that I check out, including my own PCs that I sell to you guys on my own website. But let's see if they get enough things right for this to be a solid option for you. Starting with the introduction, this build is from Lyte Gaming PCs, and this is specifically their under $1,000 Phantom gaming PC. And speaking of that $1,000, right now when this video goes live, they're actually doing a huge Black Friday deal where they are removing their $100 builder's fee, but that's where I have my first discrepancy with this build. About a month ago when I agreed to review this build, it was specifically under $1,000, which is why I agreed to it, but now that they removed the $100 builder's fee, they artificially jacked up the original price to $1,032. Now this is a standard business practice. Unfortunately, we all know that Amazon does this on Prime Day, but I just wasn't a big fan of this right off the bat. The cool thing that they do with pricing, however, is they actually list out how much each of the parts cost them on the website. Granted, if you're an expert PC builder, you'll laugh at some of these prices and you'll mentally start to jot down all the ways you could have beat it in price to performance, but it's cool that they include it nonetheless. Just remember that this would be impossible to constantly update for every part, so I'm not too concerned about it, but I just know for a fact that if you're an expert PC builder, which isn't their target audience by the way, if you look at this, you're probably gonna question it. It's also worth mentioning that for the Black Friday sale, on every purchase you get a chance to do a wheel spin where you can get a free upgrade such as higher speed RAM, a bigger SSD, and things like that. Also on their website, they have an upgrade configurator tool where you can choose to add on things like more RAM, SSDs, and case fans, and you can even add peripherals to go along with your build as well. And finally, while we're here, they do advertise their risk-free purchasing plan. This includes a guaranteed safe delivery, which we'll talk about next. There's also a 30-day return window, but the customer does have to pay the return shipping, and there's also a 6-month full warranty that goes along with the normal manufacturer warranties that you may have on the parts. That guaranteed safe delivery is definitely something that I can attest to though. Our PC build came double boxed with a ton of bubble wrap in between. They also used Instapack to keep the GPU and CPU cooler in there nice and snug. And honestly, this is about as good as you can ship a gaming PC right now, and we had absolutely zero issues with the shipment of our build. As far as specs go for our build, this Lyte Phantom build is rocking a Ryzen 5 2600, 16GB of DDR4 RGB RAM, a 500GB 2.5-inch SATA SSD, a 4GB GTX 1650, and here's the list of the other parts as well. I looked around the internet, and although there's no argument that you could definitely beat this in terms of price to performance if you build yourself and find some really good deals, but this is about what's typical around the internet for pre-built gaming PCs here in 2021, and this is honestly pretty hard to beat right now. With the GPU shortage and now the supply chain and shipping issues, we just aren't seeing the crazy price to performance value like we used to, and a Ryzen 5 2600 and GTX 1650 is what's the norm here currently in late 2021 for pre-builds. Now I do have one issue with the main core components, and that's definitely the SSD. For a $1,000 build, having only a 2.5-inch SATA 512GB SSD is unacceptable in my book. On their website, they say that they paid $69 for it, and we all know that you can get almost any 500GB NVMe SSD for that price, which would give you much better performance. Now I'm sure somebody can nitpick every single part in this build like you guys do with my own builds. I personally just think that the SSD was the worst choice, and for a $1,000 gaming PC, I would have really liked to see an NVMe drive in there. Also, just as a note, if you aren't familiar with pre-builts in general, a lot of these websites, including Lyte gaming PCs, like to mix and match components, and they aren't always properly listed on their website. Things like motherboards, SSDs, RAM kits, and power supplies could technically be swapped out with multiple options and still give you the exact same performance. They aren't going to change the core performance components like the CPU and graphics card on you, but just know that you might not get the exact motherboard that's listed on the website, for example. And speaking of this motherboard, here's where I have to nitpick some more. I'm pretty sure a lot of pre-built companies do this, but you guys know I'm definitely not a fan. Installing a micro ATX motherboard inside a full-size ATX case is just amateur hour in my opinion, and although that doesn't change the performance and a beginner PC gamer probably won't even question this, for someone like me, that's just a big no-no. I hate how there's all this extra room at the bottom and it exposes these ugly AF cables. Definitely something to keep in mind. Now, I don't want to keep nitpicking this PC build over and over again. Honestly, it's a really solid option still, and nothing that I've said so far would stop me from recommending it to somebody that's interested in a $1,000 pre-built gaming PC. But if they want to send this pre-built over to the ZTT HQ for a review, I'm gonna nitpick it a little bit. With that being said, we certainly have some other positives here to talk about as well. The actual assembly of the build was quite solid, and the cable management in the back is far better than what I typically do. Up at the front, things are pretty clean, but probably could have used a couple extra zip ties in there, but I think it's perfectly fine. Aesthetically, it's not too bad, but that's because we configured the lighting ourselves. There was no RGB software installed, which honestly surprised me, just so you know. Brand new PC gamers aren't going to know, for example, that you need to go to your motherboard's website page, download the RGB software, and configure the CPU cooler and RAM RGBs through that. I would have liked to see this either installed or instructions telling me to install it. And for the rest of the aesthetics, I certainly wouldn't give it the ZTT certified clean AF badge or anything, but again, compared to most pre-built companies out there, this is pretty good for a $1,000 build. One other negative worth mentioning is the lack of airflow. This case only comes with a single exhaust fan, and that's all they decided to use as well. Now granted, this case isn't going to get a ton of airflow even if you installed 50 fans in here somehow, but only having one exhaust on a $1,000 build is a little cheap. My rep did tell me that they are about to swap this case out for a new and better one, so we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled to see if they go with a better airflow case option. Now that should wrap up all the physical stuff. Let's quickly talk about the other software related issues that we noticed, and then we'll get into the performance, which is where this build truly shines. XMP on the RAM was not enabled by default, but I'm pretty sure that's what most pre-built companies are doing these days. XMP is technically overclocking, so just make sure that you enable that yourself if you buy one. And I was also not a fan that the NVIDIA driver was a full year out of date. I'm not sure if they were just preloading the SSD with an older Windows 10 image, or if this means that the PC wasn't touched in over a year. Either way, you're gonna have to update this yourself, even if it's just like 1 or 2 drivers out of date anyway. I think that pretty much wraps up my actual review of the build though. Hopefully I wasn't too harsh on them, but again, I do feel the need to nitpick some of these things because there are just a ton of pre-built options on the market today, but I do genuinely think that I would find multiple issues on every single one of them. No pre-built gaming PC is gonna be perfect. Starting our benchmarking run with the brand new Call of Duty Vanguard, this Ryzen 5 2600 and GTX 1650 combo was able to crank out 75 frames per second in 1080p with low settings. Hopefully you all saw my Vanguard benchmarks with budget GPU video that I released last week. This game is incredibly tough to run, but if you didn't, here's some epic gameplay and montage from our benchmarking god Sam.
Ready for report.
Alright, so after that, Sam tested Fortnite, and in 1080p with our typical pro settings, we actually got above that 144 FPS target mark with 163. Also, if you're interested in the temperatures while we are testing, be sure to peep those in the upper left-hand corner. Following that was also the brand new Forza Ryzen 5, which we also released a dedicated benchmarking video on last week, and this PC cranked out a respectable 86 FPS in 1080p with high settings using the built-in benchmarking tool. Rainbow Six Siege followed up after that, and in 1080p with high settings, we got 185 frames per second. Next up was Valorant, which really pushed that Ryzen 5 2600, but this title was still no match for it because in 1080p with high settings, we got 150 FPS. After that, we tested GTA 5, which is another CPU stressor, but that 2600 didn't even break a sweat again because in 1080p with high settings, we still got over 100 FPS. For another new title, we have Far Cry 6, and when using the built-in benchmarking tool in 1080p with medium settings, we just snuck over that 60 FPS target mark with 61. CSGO was up after that, which was honestly kind of unnecessary because we know this is gonna run well, but regardless, in 1080p with pro settings, settings, we got 238 FPS. And just like always, we tested 3D Mark Time Spy, and this build reached a score of 3,948. We've definitely seen higher scores for a $1,000 build with our own custom builds, but again, this is about the average performance that you can expect a pre-build to have for this price point in 2021. And finally, here's 10 more benchmarks just so you guys can see as much data as possible. Shout out to Sam for benchmarking the heck out of this pre-build, and shout out to all of you guys that comment with the lightning bolt emoji so I know who the true ZTT ballers are that watch the entire videos. Big thanks to Lyte Gaming PCs for sending this one out for a review. It's always cool to see what's on the market for pre-builds since that's not really my specialty, but like I said in the beginning, I would still recommend this to somebody that's casually looking to jump into PC gaming with a $1,000 budget. If you know somebody like that, then please feel free to recommend them my channel. That way they can watch full PC gaming setup guide videos like the one that's on the screen now. That way they know how to properly equip the $1,000 gaming PC just like this. But just like always, I hope you enjoyed this video.